What exactly do U and R string prefixes do, and what are raw string literals? While asking this question, I realized I didn't know much about raw strings. For somebody claiming to be a Dango trainer, this sucks. I know what an encoding is, and I know what U alone does since I get what is Unicode. But what does a do exactly? What kind of string does it result in? And above all, what the heck does your do? Finally, is there any reliable way to go back from a Unicode string to a simple raw string? And by the way, if your system and your text editor charset are set to UTF-8, does you actually do anything?
A U prefix denotes the value has type Unicode rather than str. Raw string literals, within a prefix, escape any escape sequences within them, so len, our \n, is 2. Because they escape sequences, you cannot end a string literal with a single backslash. That's not a valid escape sequence, e.g. our backslash. Raw is not part of the type, it's merely one way to represent the value. For example, \n and our \n are identical values, just like 32, 0x20, and 0b100000 are identical. You can have Unicode raw string literals. The source file encoding just determines how to interpret the source file, it doesn't affect expressions or types otherwise. However, it's recommended to avoid code where an encoding other than ASCII would change the meaning. Files using ASCII, or UTF-8, for Python 3.0, should not have a coding cookie. Latin 1, or UTF-8, should only be used when a comment or doc string needs to mention an author name that requires Latin 1, otherwise, using \x, \u or \u escapes is the preferred way to include non-ASCII data in string literals.
There are two types of string in Python 2, the traditional str type and the newer Unicode type. If you type a string literal without the U in front, you get the older str type which stores 8-bit characters, and with the U in front you get the newer Unicode type that can store any Unicode character. The doesn't change the type at all, it just changes how the string literal is interpreted. Without the backslashes are treated as escape characters. With the backslashes are treated as literal. Either way, the type is the same. U is of course a Unicode string where backslashes are literal backslashes, not part of escape codes. You can try to convert a Unicode string to an old string using the str function, but if there are any Unicode characters that cannot be represented in the old string, you will get an exception. You could replace them with question marks first if you wish, but of course this would cause those characters to be unreadable. It is not recommended to use the str type if you want to correctly handle Unicode characters.
There's not really any raw string, there are raw string literals, which are exactly the string literals marked by an R before the opening quote. A raw string literal is a slightly different syntax for a string literal, in which a backslash is taken as meaning just a backslash, except when it comes right before a quote that would otherwise terminate the literal, no escape sequences to represent new lines, tabs, backspaces, form feeds, and so on. In normal string literals, each backslash must be doubled up to avoid being taken as the start of an escape sequence. This syntax variant exists mostly because the syntax of regular expression patterns is heavy with backslashes, but never at the end, so the except clause above doesn't matter, and it looks a bit better when you avoid doubling up each of them, that's all. It also gained some popularity to express native Windows file paths with backslashes instead of regular slashes like on other platforms, but that's very rarely needed, since normal slashes mostly work fine on Windows 2, and imperfect due to the except clause above. R is a byte string in Python 2 *, UR is a Unicode string, again, in Python 2 *, and any of the other three kinds of quoting also produces exactly the same types of strings, so for example R, R, are all byte strings, and so on. Not sure what you mean by going back, there is no intrinsically back and forward directions, because there's no raw string type, it's just an alternative syntax to express perfectly normal string objects, byte or Unicode as they may be. And yes, in Python 2 *, the U is of course always distinct from just the former is a Unicode string, the latter is a byte string. What encoding the literal might be expressed in is a completely orthogonal issue. E.g., consider Python 2.6. The Unicode object of course takes more memory space, very small difference for a very short string, obviously, winky face.
Rawstring means it is stored as it appears. For example, backslash is just a backslash instead of an escaping.
Prefixes.